Om Gyantimidandasya Gyananjanachalakaya Chakshurun Militam Jena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. I am very honored, very grateful to be in this historical bookstore. My special gratitude to Eitan and to Marianne and to all the other staff members here for so kindly welcoming me and giving me the opportunity to be with all of you. And thank you all for coming. I'd like to briefly read a passage from this book that I wrote, and then I'll tell you a little about it. But before I start, I'd like to say that I never wanted to write this book. Over a course of about 30 years, people were requesting me to write about this extraordinary journey I took as a teenage boy in search of meaning and fulfillment. But I always said no, for two primary reasons. One is, I thought it was an act of arrogance to write a book about me, where I, me, and mine would be on every page so many times. And I also thought that if I actually tell the truth, nobody will believe me. But a few years ago, one of my very dearest friends, Radhanath Swami, an African American, who was a mentor for Nelson Mandela, Muhammad Ali, Alice Coltrane, and a wonderful man with thousands and thousands of well-wishers all over the world. He was dying of cancer, and he asked me to be at his bedside. And during that time, he took me by the hand and made me promise to write this book. He said it would be an act of arrogance not to write it, if the universal message within it could help others. So my very dear friend and brother, Kapila, has asked me to read a particular passage. And then I'll tell you what it all means. It was when I first arrived in India. When I was 19, I grew up in the 1960s in America. I was very much a part of the counterculture, the civil rights movement, and I was really confused. I was looking for meaning and purpose in life. And like so many others, I was rebelling against the established society because it seemed so shallow. There was a war in Vietnam that I was about to be drafted into. So I joined the civil rights movement with the people of Martin Luther King. For some time, I decided to take a summer trip to Europe with my friend Gary. We got a $65 flight to Luxembourg. And we came to England. And not far from here, Piccadilly Circus and all these other places, I used to be kind of making the scene with the counterculture of the UK. And I went to the Isle of Wight Rock Festival. But somehow or other, although I thought these were my people, there was a silent call in my heart that was just taking me away from everything. And eventually, from a mountaintop in Crete, a Greek island, I was called to leave my friend Gary to hitchhike to India. We had no money. I hitchhiked through Turkey, Iran, Afghanistan, Pakistan, and ultimately came to India. It was a challenge because they wouldn't let me in because I had, I think, 36 cents. But you have to read the book to find out why. But on that trip through the Middle East, I think I aged about 30 years from the various, very, very difficult situations I was confronted with. When I came to India, I went to the Himalayas, where I found a very nice little cave to live in. Among caves, I would say it was about a 2-star cave. It was in the jungle near Rishikesh. And each day there was a rock in the middle of the Ganges that I would sit on. And from sunrise to sunset, I would meditate, pray, and contemplate. On my way back to my cave, there was a little merchant who sold vegetables, and he would give me 1 carrot. The first day I was there, one sadhu came up to me and told me that I had to throw my Western dress in the current of the Ganges and wear the robes of a sadhu. I said, "What is a sadhu?" I had just come out of my teens. I wasn't aware. And he said a sadhu was a homeless wanderer seeking the truth. So I thought, that sounds like me. So I started wearing these robes. So here I am, sitting on this rock in the middle of the Ganges, where the current was very fast rushing all around me. Spread out around me on all sides was Mother Ganges in her winter dress of sparkling, undulating aqua. Her waves rippled and swirled as if intoxicated by her own beauty. No human artist could capture even a moment of this unending display. And just as her art was created, it simultaneously disappeared. I took from this a lesson. All beautiful forms in this world are in the process of transformation. Nothing is stable. With every moment, our reality is changing. Mother Ganges, like nature, is constant, but no manifestation of hers remains. Likewise, all that we hold dear in this world is imperceptibly vanishing. We cannot cling to anything. But if we can appreciate the beauty of the underlying current of truth, we can enjoy a reality deeper than the fickle waves of joy and sorrow. I sat, a submissive student trying to learn from my teacher. She begins her course from high in the Himalayas and flows without cease to the sea. Innumerable obstacles, huge rocks, fallen trees, or even mountains block her way, but nothing will stop her journey to the sea. Gracefully, she flows over, under, or around all obstructions. Mother Ganges teaches us that if we want to attain the sea of our aspiration, we must persevere in our goal and never be discouraged by the inevitable obstacles that come on our path. All impediments are like rocks in the river of life. We should flow around them and never give up. With the Lord's help, there is always a way. As I sat on that rock, I imagined the watching of the flow of the river was like watching the passing of life. If one is inside the river, one is greatly affected by it. But if one sits on the bank, one can observe it with detachment. Mother Ganges teaches that if we learn to be detached from our ego and the flurry of the mind and senses and the world around us, and observe life with a sober disposition, we gain wisdom. After the sunset each evening, I returned to my cave in the forest and contemplated the gifts of the day. One day I thought about how millions of years of history had been enacted on these banks. During the age of the Aryans, spirituality flourished. Alexander the Great came and went. Then the Mughals conquered northern India, ruled for centuries only to be vanquished by the British Empire, which was eventually driven away by Mahatma Gandhi, Subhash Chandra Bose, and the Indian freedom movement. Slavery and freedom, war and peace, political conquest and defeat, like the seasons, they had all come and gone. Through it all, timeless Mother Ganges patiently flowed toward the sea. Truth, too, was unchanging. Whatever may happen in this world, however dramatic, it could not disturb the flow of truth. Many objects I observed were swept along in the current among were leaves, flowers, uprooted trees, a dead buffalo, and even human corpses. If an object remained in the river's flow, I reflected, it would eventually be carried to the sea. But in the course of time, most things would be diverted to the banks and their progress halted. The spiritual path and the spiritual teacher are like the current of Mother Ganges, and the students are like the objects carried along on the river. If the follower remains faithfully in the current of the holy teachings, he or she will be carried to the ocean of spiritual truth. But many temptations and diversions appear along the banks, promising comfort and happiness, tempting the follower to come out from the current that leads to one's heart's aspiration. Not all aspirants will remain faithful, but those who do can reach the ocean of enlightenment. I wondered, who will be my teacher, and can I remain faithful? Early one morning, just before sunrise, as I looked downstream into the current that never slept, I considered her 1,000-mile journey. The sea was calling, and each drop of water patiently flowed in the current of her ultimate destination, so far away. Mother Ganges is teaching me that patience and steadfastness are required to follow my calling. I never really stopped to think why I had left behind the promises of the world to sit alone on a rock in the Ganges and endure a rigorous, self-imposed fast. Why did I act in such extreme ways, like a person obsessed? At the time, I did not feel that these were my choices. I felt the mysterious hand of destiny leading me forward. After about a month of drinking water from the Ganges, eating one small carrot a day that was donated to me. I felt so deeply enriched. I can tell you honestly, I only went to one semester of college, but I felt that month, the lessons and the wisdom that I learned sitting on that rock, all alone, in the middle of the river. I learned more than I had ever learned in my whole life. But to be honest with you, when the month was over, I was really eager to eat something. Somebody donated me 1 rupee. At that time, there were 7 rupees to $1. Now, all my life, I really liked peanuts. And I happened to see a peanut vendor. He was selling peanuts in the shells. He roasted them in sand with fire. I thought, the few cents that I had, I would get a